So, our fearless Governor Gavin Newsom and the California legislature want to take $25 million of your taxpayer money to fight the incoming Trump administration and what their efforts will ultimately be. We want to get an attorney's approach on this one. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel today. That's right, we're taking a really microscopic look into the special legislature today. I promise we're going to have Rick on. We're going to look at it as a whole, probably at some point next week. But I wanted to focus on something today that was pretty specific, and I wanted to get the attorney's perspective on it. So that, of course, is the $25 million that the legislature is looking to put into a pot for future litigation against the Trump administration coming in. To talk us through that, though, we have brought back on managing attorney at Michelle and Associates. That is Tiffany Chevrant. Tiffany, thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into that, guys, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. We're talking about all the litigation in the Second Amendment movement here in California. We're talking about all the legislation that's happening. We're talking about the programs and the way the culture is shifting here in the state as well. And you can help us do that. Help us get this message out by liking, sharing, and subscribing. So I got a couple of quotes here that I wanted to go through. Jacob, if you could actually pull this one up from Politico to kind of give us an idea of what we're dealing with here. It says here in Sacramento, the holiday will be short-lived. The legislature is back on Monday. That, of course, was yesterday, and that means the Attorney General Rob Bonta is getting ready, both to fight President-elect Donald Trump and to push the Assembly and Senate to pony up funding for an onslaught of litigation with the incoming administration. I guess it's fair to point out that that is offensive litigation. That is not defensive litigation that they're trying to get the legislature and the taxpayers to pony up for. The special session will focus specifically on appropriating money to the California Department of Justice and other state agencies before Trump takes office January 20th. Governor Gavin Newsom last week promised the state won't be caught flat-footed, even though he hopes that there's not one lawsuit with the Trump administration. I highly doubt that. Given what happened during Trump's last term, that seems very unlikely. California provides its DOJ with $2.5 million every year for litigation, but the agency received 3 times that amount during the president-elect's first 4 years. And then I guess a little bit more context here from Cal Matters. Jacob, if you could pull this one up just to get an idea, because it wasn't exactly that 4 times the $2.5 million that the DOJ ended up spending. From Cal Matters, it says here, California spent $41 million over the past 4 years. Of course, those 4 years are referencing Trump's first administration over its regulations and rollbacks involving climate change, immigration, consumer rights, and more. During Donald Trump's presidency, California Attorney General filed lawsuit after lawsuit challenging the various federal agencies that set new national policies. So here we are again, 4 years after 2020. We've got a new Trump administration coming in, and we have Gavin Newsom calling a special legislature, of which we're already seeing something come out. That is, they're asking for a lot more money for offensive litigation. So, Tiffany, my question to you is this. It seems like the posturing here is primarily focused on climate change and abortion and immigration. Will the Second Amendment litigation that's currently going on and what we expect to happen in 2025 be affected by this spending by the legislature?
Well, unfortunately, we live in a state that is highly anti-Second Amendment, all for gun control. That's the position that this administration has taken under Newsom. And so we anticipate that 25 million is the starting point of this. Several legislators have even said this is a down payment on this litigation. So they fully expect to ask for more past the 25 million. And we anticipate that that's going to find its way towards Second Amendment litigation as well as these other things, because they've vowed to fight back against anything and everything that the Trump administration puts into place. So while Newsom says he hopes not to have any lawsuits, I just don't see that happening. He will use that money to push the agenda from California further than he has in the past.
Well, the way that I kind of can picture it, if you can picture just a pot of money, they're kind of vowing to push it all over into these specific areas. How is it exactly that this money, which is tax money, by the way, that almost half of Californians voted for this new Trump administration? So I think it's kind of ironic that we need to shore up this ideology in California when the culture is clearly moving the other way. How is it, though, when it's aimed in one place, like I said, immigration and climate change and other things, that the money actually finds its way into Second Amendment litigation?
Yeah, I mean, 40% of Californians voted for this type of change under the Trump administration, but that is being completely ignored. Uh, the money will go to the DOJ, and we know the DOJ and the Attorney General are who fight for the state's laws to uphold those. So that falls into the Second Amendment, that falls into First Amendment, that falls into environmental, all of the things that the state would fight to protect under their laws that they pass, whether they're constitutional or not, would go, the money would go into the DOJ's budget. DOJ at that point could decide how to use that based on whatever litigation's going on. We already know that last legislative session that there was a shortfall in DOJ for being able to fight against litigation. They were hurting because they had had so many lawsuits based on unconstitutional laws over the past several years, and the deficit being what it is in California as well. So we fully believe that some of this money is going to seep into those Second Amendment cases that have been ongoing. We have several that are probably going to the Supreme Court or the Ninth Circuit in this next year in 2025, and that's expensive. And so where they don't fight specifically something that the Trump administration is going to do, that money is still going to be sitting there for litigation. And it's very easy to say that it would flow over into cases that are ongoing right now.
Yeah, and I think we can all on this channel attest to how much they love continuously appealing all of the good decisions that we see for our Second Amendment rights in the courts to keep those lawsuits tied up in the courts. We've already been through one Trump term. I guess, going back 8 years, it's hard to remember. I don't remember any kind of special session. There may have been legislation. There may not have been. I would have to look through to see if there were calls for more money to be requested from the taxpayer in order to fight with litigation against Trump the first time. But we did see Cal Matters reported that we spent $41 million in the state in Trump's first term. Is this something that we saw between 2016 to 2020 as well, or was that specifically allocated elsewhere? Did we see spillover into Second Amendment litigation with that money back then?
Yeah, so there was no special session to build the war chest like they're doing now. It was just they were taking from the coffers of the state and reallocating funds to where they needed it in order to fight in the courts. And what they did in the previous administration when Trump was in was they did have all of these, I think it was 120 cases that they filed. But unfortunately, none of those were significant in a win for California. They were either, stayed for other cases while they waited on other cases. And during that time that those matters were stayed, there was a change in the administration. And when the Biden administration came in, a lot of those rules or regulations were rescinded. So the cases just kind of went away. And so the state of California spent $41 million on all of these cases with nothing really to show for it. That's taxpayer dollars. And there are people out there that are tracking these cases, and they have trackers on for all the states, but specifically for California, because California really filed more cases against the Trump administration than anyone. And I can send you that link where you can track those cases. You can put that out for your viewers, because it's really important to see what the outcome of each of those cases were. There was no significant protection of anything for CRPA like Newsom is promising. Newsom says he's going to protect the way of life for Californians, but he's not getting anywhere in the courts and spending a lot of tax dollars along the way. Meanwhile, 40% of California doesn't really subscribe to what he's talking about anymore.
Well, you don't get into a deficit like we're in for no reason. So I guess that would kind of fall in line with the pattern that the Newsom government of California has kind of kept the entire time that they've been in there. As far as the money is concerned, what is it exactly that this money does when it's put into a lawsuit? And I guess what I mean by that is, are they expecting just a sheer very high volume of lawsuits that they're going to file, or does it mean hiring more people, outside people, to make an individual case better? What does it actually mean when they say they need to put more money into litigation?
Yeah, I think it's several things. One, they're never afraid to file more litigation, especially if they are backed by millions of dollars they know they can use for that. We do have legislative session coming in starting in January, in addition to the special session that Newsom just called. And so we anticipate that there will be a lot of litigation that's passed in this new session in an attempt to thwart whatever it is that is more of a conservative agenda, which typically involves Second Amendment issues. So more legislation leads to more litigation. They'll probably be hiring more attorneys. Several years ago, there was a big call for the DOJ to hire more attorneys when they got more funding. So I wouldn't be shocked if they put out a call to try to hire more positions to fight this and do all the drafting and the research and everything they need to do, as well as just being able to appeal and fight back in those cases more than they would be if they were at a deficit. If they don't have the money to continue appeals, a lot of times they're more willing to settle a case, or they're more willing to let a case go on to trial instead of all of this motion practice that they do, where it just slows down the cases over and over again. And so if they have this war chest, 25 million starting out, that they said that's the down payment, that's probably going to embolden them to try to do more and push these cases further and draw them out longer, in the hopes that eventually maybe something will happen the same way it did last time, where there was an administrative change and everything will just go away and stay the way it is. So there's several things that can happen when you are talking that much money. And unfortunately, the people that are fighting against these kinds of laws that are unconstitutional, like Second Amendment, First Amendment, even environmental groups that are fighting against some of the environmental restrictions, they don't have the tax base to fund their cases. They do it by donations. I mean, CRPA does this all through donations. And so we're really at a disadvantage when they start pulling in this kind of money from the taxpayers specifically for litigation.
Yeah, so that's something we'll really have to keep an eye on, whether or not they're going to be hiring more people with your tax dollars to contribute toward eroding your rights. Yeah, definitely, Jacob, if we can get that link, let's go ahead and put it in the description below. I think it's a good idea to be able to look at the track record of those cases also, so that we can follow along in this upcoming year. So I guess final thoughts, Tiffany, how quick does this kick off in 2025? I know that Trump's not inaugurated until January 20th. How soon do you think we start seeing this money get spent, or is it already being spent? And what's the overall effect that you see in 2025 on Second Amendment litigation?
Well, they did introduce the bill for the 25 million. So they are on a roll. I don't think there's going to be much resistance from the Democratic Party up in Sacramento. So he will probably get the 25 million fairly quickly. That'll be probably an emergency thing that will be granted right away. So they'll be playing with that money from the beginning of January. I think they're already probably drafting up different motions and different complaints to be ready to go, because they do know some of the things that Trump has said he wants to do with federal law. And so they're going to try to have those things ready in the hopper, ready to file as soon as he comes out with something, and just really try to be that thorn in his side. Now, whether that trickles down into hunting or Second Amendment areas, that will remain to be seen. But right off the bat, they're going to try to make an impact. And Newsom is really, he's the one that says California is leading the country. He has aspirations of bigger things. We know that. And he wants to kind of be that savior of California, show that he's the savior of the Democratic Party. But what the problem is that everything he leads in is really bad. So he's number one in gun control, but he's also number one in active shootings in 2023. The police budgets are low in all the cities, and yet crime is rampant in California. And so these are things that he's trying to distance himself with starting in January, and be able to turn the focus more on his fight against Trump and against more conservative agenda. And that includes the Second Amendment. And so I think that's where we're going to see it. There's going to be a big splash in January, and then you probably won't hear about it very much for a while, because the cases will just kind of go their way. And if they lose, you won't hear much about it either. We'll try to update you if California is losing on a lot of those cases, but Gavin Newsom is not going to hold a press conference if he loses these cases. He's just going to go on to the next one and try to file the next case.
Well, something certainly to follow along with, and we will definitely do that. We want to make sure that we're as prepared as possible, and that we have a fighting chance with the litigation that we have on Second Amendment matters here in California. Tiffany, I really appreciate your insight on this. Thank you for coming on and sharing.
Yeah, thanks for having me again, and we'll keep updated as this all moves forward.
Absolutely. And guys, if you like content like this, you want to keep seeing videos on Second Amendment litigation and legislation here in California, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe to these videos. It's a great way for you, from the comfort of your own home, to contribute towards this cause so that we can continue pushing back against the California state government on these archaic laws that they keep pushing on us. Thanks again, guys. We'll see you on the next one.